Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today it is time for Friday Reads on September 6th. The first week of September is just about done. This week went kind of fast. I don't know about you, but it feels like it went fast. But I don't know why. It just did. So I do have some good books to talk about this week that I will get to in just a minute. A couple of books, maybe just two that I finished, but several in progress. More in progress than it's outside of my comfort zone. I don't know. Somehow it got away from me and I started a bunch of things at the same time. But we'll get to that in a minute. So we'll start with TV. We actually haven't quite finished with Dark Winds. I think we have a few episodes left in season 2. Not liking season 2 as much as season 1. I liked the slow rollout in season 1 with a lot of emphasis on the setting, the people, cultural information, and a glimpse at different aspects of daily life of these people on a Navajo reservation in the 1970s. And then it kind of, I don't know, season 2 is like I'm actually watching a police drama from the 1970s. It's all kind of action oriented and chase scenes and hiding behind rocks with guns, and it's, I don't know, to me, when it gets into a lot of action sequences, I get really bored. My mind just goes somewhere else. So I'm not, but anyway, I think we're going to finish it. We did shift over and watch a documentary about Steve Martin that was actually really good. It's on Apple TV. And the first episode of Slow Horses season 4 dropped yesterday, and it was a good one. If you're watching that show, the opening episode of season 4 was really good. But they're only putting out one a week, so it's frustrating, and I have to find other things to watch in between. Of course, one could always just go back to one's books, so let's talk about those. September began, Shorty September. I have been reading a lot of short stories, mostly the ones from my 30 Stories in 30 Days project. And I will be putting up a video on Sunday reviewing the first set of stories, the first week of stories. So if you are enjoying the stories or you're interested in that project, that video is coming. And also, if you go back in the community post, you'll see links to all of the stories each day, and that's ongoing. So if you can join in at any time, read as much or as little as you like, but I will be putting up a discussion video on Sunday. So I read The English Understand Wool by Helen DeWitt. This is the first book I've ever read by Helen DeWitt. If you recommend something else, let me know in the comments, because I really enjoyed this thoroughly. This was so much fun. It is very short. It's only about 60-something pages. It's part of this imprint called Storybook ND, The Pleasure of Reading a Great Book from Cover to Cover in an Afternoon. I do recommend that you read this all in one day, and not cut it up with a bunch of other reading, because it is very short and the flow is important. Not that much happens, but what happens is important, and to keep it all in your mind as it goes. So in this story, we have a young girl, a 17-year-old girl. We will call her Marguerite. That's what she's called in the book. Apparently it is her given name at birth, but it's not the name that she has been accustomed to hearing growing up. And I'm not going to tell you why. But Marguerite has been raised in a very rarefied atmosphere of wealth and luxury. And she's grown up in Marrakesh with a French mother with impeccable, exquisite taste. Like, her mother's just dedicated to the pursuit of finer things and appropriate decorum at all times, and never committing crimes of vulgarity or poor taste. And her father is English. Her mother, not only is she dedicated to the pursuit of excellence and finery and quality, but also of personal behavior. So every year during Ramadan, Marguerite and her mother travel somewhere else in the world for 6 weeks so that their staff back at home can have a long time off for Ramadan that extends before and after the month and is fully paid. And this is an example of how her mother really emphasizes the importance of having these excellent relationships with people that work for you, either whether they are your house staff or service workers, someone in a restaurant. a tailor that is making something for you, and the whole thing about the tailor is just a thing. But she really emphasizes the importance of cultivating those relationships and being generous, being thoughtful. And this is very important in the story. It's not just about being a kind and good person, but chickens will come home to roost. That's all I'm going to say. Marguerite is used to traveling the globe and having these exquisite experiences everywhere. And then all of a sudden, something startling happens. So I don't want to give too much away, but something comes to light, and all of a sudden, Marguerite is in demand by the paparazzi and TV stations and publishers who want to hear her story. But her story and her thoughts and the way she tells her story is not necessarily what they were expecting. There's definitely a commentary in the story about the publishing world, the legal world, people who see an advantage and they have certain preconceived notions, and it's quite delightful what actually occurs. And Marguerite's voice and her point of view, very different, very refreshing, very fun. I don't want to say anything more about it because there's not that much happens, but it's so satisfying. So I do recommend this book. You can read it in an hour or two. It's pure delight. From very short and light, we go to something longer, more substantial, and quite a bit more serious. And that was My Friends by Hisham Matar. It's very, very glary. It's kind of a boring cover. And that was my main fear going into this book, that it was going to be boring. And that isn't what happened. I think part of the thing is that in reviews of this book, most people have been very careful about plot spoilers. And when you tell a little bit about what this book concerns, it doesn't sound that compelling, but it really is. This is on the Booker long list currently. I would be shocked and dismayed and saddened and outraged if it did not make it to the short list. And it is the only book that I have read from this long list that I would not have a complete throwdown, screaming tantrum if it won the Booker Prize instead of James. I still want James to win, and I would have a smaller tantrum. But this one actually is, I wouldn't just be completely flabbergasted and horrified if it won the Booker Prize. It was really quite an excellent novel. We have a young man named Khaled who's been growing up in Libya, and when he is a young teenager, 13 or 14, and he lives in Benghazi with his parents, a good close-knit family, with his sister and his parents. His dad is a teacher. We find out that his dad actually had aspirations to be a history professor, but due to the political climate in the country, he changed paths and became a teacher, a high school teacher. And we learn a lot more about his father as the story unfolds. Khaled and his family are listening to a radio program, and a short story is read on the program. And the short story is a strange, surreal tale about a man who gets consumed by a cat. And Khaled is just really entranced with this story. He wants to know more about the author, but he can't find out a whole lot about him. He does know that this author is about 19 or 20. That 6-year age gap between being 14-ish and 20-ish is a really big gap, but that same age gap becomes less consequential later on when they actually get to know each other in real life. I'm not giving anything away because the very, very beginning of this book is not the story about Khaled hearing the radio program. It's about, the very opening sequence is Khaled seeing off an old friend named Hisham, who is going to be moving away from the country. They're in London, they're walking to the train station, and then the entire framework of this novel is Khaled walking home across London. So he takes some side trails, and so he walks across London in the evening for about 2 hours, and while he's walking, we are hearing this story. And at this point, we know that he is a middle-aged man, and he's going to tell a story that goes back to when he was 18 and left for college. That's the framework, and the story is that indeed Khaled is able to get a scholarship and go to Scotland to a university in a small group of Libyan students. And he is studying literature. All through this book, there is a love of language and literature and authors that is a real joy for a reader to experience those times with Khaled and also with his friend Hisham later. He's studying, he's going to go home for the holidays, but his friend Mustafa proposes that they take a little trip into London to attend a demonstration. There's just this energy, and they want to see what's going on. So they think they're going to just sneak into the crowd and kind of experience it and then be on their way. But something happens at the demonstration. You can look up the actual historical event of what happened at this protest and the furor that erupted because a British police officer was killed, and you can find out more about it. But this story is a more personal story about what happened to Khaled and his friend Mustafa, and then their life trajectory that changes dramatically from that point. So the story is called My Friends, and the main focus is on the trio, Khaled, Mustafa, and Hisham, about three people exiled from Libya and how they respond differently, and how the years change them and the different phases that they go through. He has also a close friend from college who is a woman who's important in the story, and there are some assorted girlfriends and partners along the way. I would say I felt that the women characters were less developed. I felt like the girlfriends were a little bit interchangeable. I didn't really think about that until I got to the end. It wasn't like something that was bothering me all the way through. I was kind of reminded when I was reading this book of the reading experience that I had when I read Enter Ghost by Isabella Hamad. It was another book about a place and a culture and that is under sort of perpetual strife and conflict that I know some about from just being a person that keeps up with the news and lives in this world, but I don't really know. I don't know the details. I don't know what it feels like to grow up and have that affect your family for generations, how it could just the constant living in a state of tension and even danger at times. So that I did think about that book when I read this book. That I read both of these books this year was kind of interesting and really rewarding as well. So that's all I'm going to tell you about it, because it's kind of long, but it doesn't feel long. It has very short chapters, and he carefully rolls out certain plot points at certain moments, and those plot points deepen the character development. It's very well integrated, and he includes just enough information about the historical and political aspects that readers who don't have firsthand information will understand, but it's not, some books, that doesn't work out really well. It becomes too didactic, or somebody sort of has a phony reason to come in and launch a big political science lecture. It's not like that at all. It's very well woven together, and just the different personalities and how the way that they support one another and when they clash, and all of it just really, really good. So I'm glad that I read it, and I'm glad that Michael lit a fire under me and told me to put it on the top of the pile, because now I can pass it on for someone else at the library to enjoy. And this is definitely my number 2 favorite book out of this year's Booker list. So now we get to a big old mishmash of things that I'm currently reading. And if you watch this at all, that I do not do well with reading more than 2 books at a time. But somehow I voluntarily let things just bubble up and surround me. I think I kind of forgot that there's 2 books, and then there's all the short stories, and I needed to not add anything else, but somehow I did. So I started reading Twelfth Night, and I think I thought that I could read Twelfth Night and finish it before I started some of these others. but I didn't. And then I got stuck. And then I tried to hurry up and finish it. And then I remembered you can't read Shakespeare like that. So I just stopped kind of halfway through, and I'm going to come back to it after I finish a couple other things, because I don't want to, why am I rushing through 12th Night? I want to enjoy it. So I'm halfway through, stranded. I'm going to come back. I also started reading, and I knew this was going to happen, but I thought, I'm reading my short stories of the day, but I'm going to sample some other stories. So I started reading this, and I haven't gone on to sample any other stories because I'm still just reading The Collectors. It's a collection of stories edited by A.S. Byatt. It's technically young adult, but don't let that stop you. They're really excellent, very diverse, and she asked a group of authors that she admired to contribute a story in which collectors or collecting plays a role, and to be as weird as they felt like being. And so there are different, there's a continuum of weirdness. Some of them are magical realism or minor horror. Some of them are graphic. Some of them are just realistic fiction. There's all kinds of things going on, and I'll talk more about it when I get to the end. And then yesterday, I started my buddy read with Melinda from A Web of Stories. We're reading Fire Exit by Morgan Talty. This is his first novel and his follow-up to his story collection, Night of the Living Res, which I love so much. And I can't really talk about it because we just started, and I've only read the first couple chapters, but we are both quite engrossed and instantly really responding and caught up in the main character, Charles, who is narrating this book. And I will talk more about it probably next week. And then also, it's stuck. My nonfiction book of the month, Old in Art School by Nell Painter, the mysteriously heavy book. I think it's just on this really nice paper because there's art reproductions, but I noticed that with Thunderclap too. This is Nell Painter, who is a historian, a retired professor from Princeton University who decides to go back to school and study art. And she's not content with what she calls being like a Sunday afternoon artist or someone who just takes a little class here and there. She tried that out, and then she just decided to go all in and actually formally study art. So in her mid-60s, she goes back and begins at undergraduate so that she'd be able to go on to graduate school and receive her MFA in art. And so I've only just begun. I've read the first few chapters where she talks about why she got this idea, how she was inspired by her mother, who also reinvented herself more than once in her later years, and just the experience of being amongst the young undergraduates, and also the different kinds of experiences and the effects of what teachers and what professors and teachers, the words that they say to you and the attitudes they have, and how that can impact you, and how she's considering it as an older, mature person, but what that might be doing to a young beginning student. And anyway, it's very, very good. I haven't gotten very far, but I will again speak more of it next week. And so there you have it. Once I maybe finish the Collectors, I can go back to the Shakespeare and try to get my reading life back in balance so that I'm not... what happens is, if I have too much going on, I just start to spiral and I don't read any of them, and I start doing things like planning other months and next year, and I think that's my response. I have too much going on, so I'm gonna construct some more things to go on. Or I think I'll just buy some books now, and I don't know, I lose my mind. So I'm gonna bring my mind back together and get centered. The next video will be the one on Sunday about the first batch of short stories, and I have almost finished them, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to choose for story of the week. You can think about it too if you have an opinion. So let me know what you think about any of these books I talked about today, or what you are reading this week that is wonderful, what you have planned for the weekend, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.